Now that I've stripped it, I'm just winding the edges so that they don't fray. And taking this and just wrapping it into what's already there. Folding that down. And I'll fold this one up. Doesn't really matter, I just like them to be a little different. So that one's, I'm going to fold it up. That way they can't come in contact with each other that easily. But I'm going to go a step further and I'm going to cover this with electrical tape. I don't like any chance of grounding. I want to make sure that my charges do in fact go off. And for a little added strength, I'm going to wrap the two lines together now that they've been insulated.
Ding dong, ding dong.
So your charge at this point is pretty much ready to go. I will point out, typically before you leave, you don't set your charges up until you're out at the field. And you don't want any chance of this going off. This is dangerous still because the flame comes out this side. You could get burnt at minimum. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll ground these two together by just doing one wrap at the end until I'm out at the field. Once I'm out at the field, I then place this, there again is my 1/2 inch piece of plastic that I have, plastic tubing. I fit that over the end, and then I put it onto the little epoxy cap that I made. This is then, these wires are then secured to each of these two metal end pieces. Once you secure them to the metal end pieces, keep in mind your quick link or anything like that could come into contact with both sides of this, and that would stop your charge from going off. So once you wire these like this onto either terminal, okay, I then typically cover each terminal with masking tape so that there's absolutely no chance that any exposed metal is showing, because I want my charge to go off. I want to make sure my parachute does in fact deploy. That's pretty much it for the charges. When I do a backup charge on a small area like this where I'm using 0.4 cc's of black powder, I'll go 0.2. If I'm using over 1 gram of black powder or 1 cc, then I will use 0.3 to 0.4 cc's more of powder for my backup charge. And again, that's just to make sure that it goes off. Backup charges, keep in mind you need a second computer for that. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because at this point this video is only covering a single computer. So a few things about the electrical line. Notice in my case I was putting it on the back bulkhead of the electronics bay, so this wire could be fairly short. But in some cases you want the charge to be far from the actual e-bay. In that case, what I'll do is I'll just take a really long section of Cat 5e wiring like this one, and I'll run it to where I want it. Whenever I have some distance, what I'll do is I'll typically protect my 4-inch diameter interior of the rocket by putting some duct tape on the actual interior surface of the rocket, and then I'll tape the charge onto that duct tape. And that way the duct tape is protecting the inside of the rocket so it doesn't get any damage when the actual charge goes off. Okay, I'm going to show you now. This is my full eBay, and what you're seeing here is two computers. None of these wires intersect from this side. This is my, let's see, that's my computer 2, so this is my backup computer. This is my computer 1, so it's my primary computer. And what I made sure is that if anything goes wrong on this side, including the battery dislodging or part of the circuitry in some way coming apart, that this side is completely unaffected. So again, all the wires are completely separated. What you'll also notice here, this is the actual switch that turns on and off, and in this case it's a screw switch, but it could be any type of switch that you desire. And you use the screwdriver. There's a hole in my actual eBay. Where's the hole? There it is. Okay, this is the hole for computer 2, and that's where I insert my screwdriver to turn off and on the electronics for that side. And you don't want to turn your electronics on until you're out at the pad before you put the igniter in. That way, if there's any mishap after you install the igniter, you know that your computers are armed and they will deploy your parachutes if you have an accidental firing of your rocket. Make sure that you label your charge where it's very clear as to which one goes where. In my case, this is 0.4 cc's, and so I want to make sure that I label them all. That way I can easily tell the difference between my backup charges, main charges, top and bottom sections of the rocket. So this is my charge for over 1 grams, and that's where I have both sides open. And the way that I start on building this charge is I take a piece of wadding and I fill one of the ends with it. I'll take one more piece of wadding, ball it up. I put that over the end as well. Keep in mind that fire is going to come out both sides of this, but then you can end up reusing the dowel. Okay, so that side is covered. There we go. Then the rest of it is packing identical to the way that we did it last time. I just fill it with the powder and then I put wadding in to finish it off, and I tape over the exterior. Just put the black powder in, and now I'm adding the wadding. Now this one's kind of long, so it'll probably take quite a bit of wadding, and you can trim these to the size you need. See, those pack pretty deep, so it's going to take a whole piece of Quest wadding to finish this. One thing you may notice is on this pyro, I've only put 1 Quest igniter rather than 2. And that's because I've tested before with 2, and I know it will go off with 2. This is going to be used for testing, not an actual flight. When I do actual flight, I always put 2, especially with 1 computer. It's not as critical if you have a backup computer, but with a single computer, I like the redundancy. It looks like this is all I'm going to need as far as wadding goes. So in this case, it took around 6 squares of wadding to fill it. And it's probably full up to here with wadding. There's not much insulated wire here, so I definitely want to separate these just a little bit. I don't want any chance of there to be a ground out. So I'm going to pull this off and retape it in between. Again, it's one igniter because I'm using this only for testing, and I've tested it with 2 to prove that 2 will actually go off with a 9-volt battery with the Quest Q2G2. Okay, so this one is pretty much ready for testing. All I need to do is write on it what it is, and in this case it's 1.2 cc's. And again, the scale to convert it from cc's to grams is 1.2 times 0.95 is the actual amount of this charge. You'll notice that on my 1.2 cc charge, I've put a very long wire on it. And the reason is because I like to put this charge way deep in the actual rocket so that it's pushing the parachute out rather than the ejection charge coming close to the E-bay and pulling the parachute out. I like all the pressure to be on the backside and come out this way. And by attaching a long wire, you can ensure that. Again, I take duct tape and I will protect the interior surface of my actual rocket with duct tape here, and then I actually tape the charge to that duct tape on the side there. That way I don't get any damage. My cording, my shot cord in this case, because it's only a 4-inch diameter rocket and it's a smaller rocket, I'm just using, I believe that's a 1/4-inch Kevlar for my shot cord. And of course that's fireproof, so I don't have to worry about the pyro interacting with the actual shot cord. And that would be, of course, Z-tied. What I'm going to demonstrate now is how to Z-tie your shot cord to pack it, as well as pack some parachutes. What I have laid out here is 2 of my rockets, and the one rocket that I have here has a small 1/4-inch Kevlar shot cord, and then my larger rocket here has 1/2-inch Kevlar shot cord, and I've already Z-wrapped. So I'm gonna Z-tie the lower part of the shot cord, and I'm gonna do that right here. So I'm gonna start Z-tying this, and that's, you just make a Z-like pattern with your shot cord. Okay, and you want to go about 4 or 5 loops around with each Z-tie. And this is just to make it where when your shot cord unwraps, it pulls out in a very organized fashion rather than knotting. So I've got this, and then you want to wrap the center with masking tape like this, and typically I like to go 1 to 2 times around, and that allows it, when that link breaks, it actually absorbs some of the shock, since this rope doesn't move much like the elastic shock cords. Okay, and then I usually go about 1 length of the Z-tie to start the next Z-tie. So I'm going to move this forward just a little bit. Move this out of the way. And I start the next one. And I'll show you why in a second I have the little bit of space between each one. Okay, so that Z wrap is pretty much done. And I'll do this one twice. So what that does is it allows you to stack these without having to wind them or anything. You put those on top of each other, and then you can put them in your actual rocket. Now on a larger shot cord like this one, this is really nice because I can just take these and stack them without wrapping or winding, and I can just put these one after another on top of each other, and it stays organized, and you can put them in this way or this way depending on how you want to get them in there. So the Z-wraps are completed, and it looked like it needed 2 for the lower section and 1 for the upper section above the actual parachute. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, my parachutes fit fairly tight inside the 4-inch diameter rocket, so I like to put baby powder on both the outside and the inside of the parachute. And typically I don't do this until I'm out at the actual rocket field, but the nice benefit is that your parachute is more likely to unwrap. Also, you get a nice puff of smoke when this deploys, and it can help you find your rocket. I'm going to need some help here, so Alan, if you could go step on the quick link, please. And that'll keep the cords nice and taut while I actually wrap the parachute, or pack the parachute, I should say. And then I'm going to pull this nice and taut like this. Okay, so it's nice and tight. And then, so that it ends up deploying in a very organized, reliable fashion, I end up taking every one of the centers and organize them. So I'm organizing each of the leaves, I guess they would be. I'm just pulling the center part so that all the rope cords end up being on one side. Now I'm going to pull it tight again. Okay, so now you've got all your cords on one side, and you've got the centers in between the cords on the other. And then I fold this over like this, and then wrap that down. And this is really helpful the larger your parachute is to do this type of thing, because again, you don't want this to knot up or deploy in an unorganized order, so it makes sure that it comes out nice and smooth and reliable every time. Okay, I then wrap this, or roll it up I should say. And some people, before I go further, there's several different schools for doing this. Some people pull these cords into here. What I do is, as you just saw, is I'll roll it up, and I want to point out one caution. When you're actually rolling this, you roll this way. You don't take it and roll like this, because if you roll like this, your cords are going to bind up. So always roll it this way. And again, you want to do this out at the actual field so that your parachute has recently aired out. There's less chance of it not opening. It'll open nice and smooth. Okay, you can get off of the cord now. Thank you so much for the help, Alan.
You're welcome.
And now you wrap your parachute protector, if you have one, around your actual parachute. And if you have a nylon parachute, then you want to wrap the Z-ties in here as well in your parachute protector, because you don't want them to get burnt, and it's easier that way. Since I've got Kevlar, I don't need to do that. And the way that I wrap this in is kind of like you would wrap a Subway sandwich. I take it, I roll it almost to the halfway point, I curl both of the ends over, and then I continue to wrap like this. And now you've got a nice package. It's protected from flame on both sides. It'll easily unroll when it comes out of the actual rocket in reliable fashion. Okay, so now you're ready, and if you notice, I've got all kinds of room now to pack this in my actual rocket. It goes very smoothly, and you're able to get all of that assembly into your rocket.